You know what? I had a whole different video planned for today, and then I kept thinking about this story, kept turning it over in my mind, and I realized I couldn't move on without giving it the full treatment it deserves. Because this isn't just a fashion controversy. This isn't just a sponsorship dispute. This is a story about what happens when the most powerful brand in sports decides who matters and who waits. So pull up a chair, because today on Courtside Classic, I'm Mira, and we are going all the way in. This is the story of Nike, Aryna Sabalenka, Eala, and the jersey that cracked women's tennis wide open. Let's set the scene properly first, because to truly feel the weight of what happened here, you need to understand who we are talking about and just how long this frustration had been building underneath the surface. Aryna Sabalenka ended her 2025 season as the world number one for the second consecutive year, after clinching her fourth Grand Slam title at the US Open. 4 Grand Slams, 2 back-to-back year-end number ones. She dominated the season from wire to wire, finishing with 63 wins and just 12 losses, collecting 4 singles titles along the way. By any honest measure, Sabalenka is sitting at the absolute summit of women's tennis right now. She is the standard. She is what every other player on the WTA Tour is chasing. And she has been a Nike athlete since 2017. 8+ years of wearing the swoosh through junior titles, through heartbreaking Grand Slam final losses, through her eventual rise to the very top of the sport. Now hold that image in your mind, because here is where the story takes its sharp, uncomfortable turn. Nike, working through Park Access, the official Nike retailer for the Philippines, dropped a limited edition t-shirt honoring Eala's Filipino heritage. Designed by Manila-based artist Georgina Camus, the tee features the national flower of the Philippines, the sampaguita, set against a tennis court background. The flower design was described as a blooming tribute to Eala's tennis journey and a reminder of her roots. Artist Georgina Camus said of the design that it was a symbol of discipline, courage, and full-circle growth, created to inspire the next generation to bloom in their own time. And before that collection even dropped, Nike had already done something even more intimate. Ahead of Eala's Wimbledon debut, Nike gifted her a sampaguita hair tie, enclosed in a white box, lined like a miniature tennis court, with a handwritten message transforming the gesture into something deeply emotional and symbolic. Nike's own note inside read, "Every dream begins as a seed. What you plant, you'll one day reap." A Filipina on the grass courts of history, not just playing for herself, but carrying a nation in full bloom. Let me just pause there for a moment, because that is not marketing copy. That is poetry. That is a brand doing something genuinely beautiful for a genuinely extraordinary athlete. And I mean that with complete sincerity. But here's the thing that makes this whole story so combustible. That level of intimacy, that level of cultural investment, that level of emotional storytelling had never once been directed at the reigning world number one. Not once. Not in 8 years. The only female Nike athlete with her own globally available custom collection as of late 2025 was Naomi Osaka, a 4-time Grand Slam champion. And Sabalenka, sitting at 3 Grand Slams and the literal top of the world rankings, was still waiting. Had been waiting for years. Fans had been asking for years. Every Grand Slam, every big tournament, supporters would flood social media with the same question. When is Nike going to treat her like the star she already is? The frustration was everywhere, and it was not quiet. Sabalenka herself had been creatively engaged with Nike all along. She sends ideas, she has a vision, she collaborated on the Jumping Tiger logo for her shoes during the 2025 Australian Open and pushed Nike to let her help design the cutout dress she wore at the WTA Finals. And she said publicly that the dress worked precisely because she fought for her own ideas to be heard. This is not an athlete who is indifferent to fashion or identity. This is a woman who thinks deeply about what she represents and has repeatedly been handed a color swap and asked to be grateful for it. I'll be honest with you, because honesty is what we do here at Courtside Classic. I found this genuinely baffling the more I dug into it. Here is a woman who, by every measurable standard of athletic achievement, should be one of the most heavily invested Nike athletes on the entire global roster. And instead, for most of her dominant run at the top, the best she could regularly get was a generic silhouette in a new shade. Take a standard Nike tennis dress, swap the color, call it custom, send it out. Fans were not fooled. Fans were not impressed. And clearly, neither was Sabalenka. Because here is what happened next. And this is the moment the entire tennis internet lost its collective mind. While speaking to the press at the WTA finals in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, Sabalenka revealed that she would not be receiving any custom outfits from Nike during the 2026 season. A reporter had asked about her beautiful cutout dress and what fans could expect from her on-court fashion going forward. And Sabalenka, instead of delivering a safe, sponsor-approved non-answer, looked directly at the cameras and told the truth. She said, "Unfortunately, next season is not going to be that special for me." Then she turned it into a public call to action. Maybe we should just start messaging Nike on Instagram and putting some pressure on. Let's wait for 2027, because that year is going to be sick. Read that back one more time. The world number one, the best women's tennis player on the planet in 2025, was publicly inviting her fans to go pressure her own sponsor's social media account because she couldn't get a custom kit. Not in private, not through her management, on camera, on the record, in front of every reporter in that room. It was clear, watching the press conference, that Sabalenka had already seen what she'd be wearing in 2026 and was genuinely, visibly upset with the lack of creativity, though she held on to hope about what might finally arrive in 2027. The internet responded with the speed and fury that only tennis Twitter is capable of producing. One fan wrote, "Surely Nike is joking. Sabalenka says her kits in 2026 won't be special. No customs. She'll have to wait for 2027. Another asked how the reigning US Open champion, finishing world number one for 2 consecutive years, doesn't have a single custom kit lined up for the following season. One fan said simply that she deserved it by now. Defending champion and over 52 weeks at number one, Nike should celebrate all their players the way they do with Naomi. The frustration wasn't coming from a fringe corner of the fan base. It was universal, it was loud, and it was completely understandable. And then the comparisons started flooding in, because of course they did. Fans pointed out that Naomi Osaka, despite being ranked 16th in the world by that point, had been receiving one stunning custom look after another from Nike. Her 2025 kits featured a sakura theme with delicate cherry blossoms celebrating her Japanese heritage, rendered in soft pinks and burgundy trims. A culturally rich, artist-conceived tribute to her roots and her identity. Meanwhile, Sabalenka, the actual world number one, was still waiting for something comparable. And then there was Coco Gauff, who had left Nike and signed with New Balance, whose fashion output since that move had been widely celebrated, with custom designs for every Grand Slam and a collaborative relationship that fans described as genuinely creative. One Sabalenka supporter said they were relieved Gauff had chosen New Balance because Nike clearly didn't know how to handle its biggest tennis stars. That was a harsh verdict. But watching the evidence pile up, it was hard to argue with. And on the men's side, Nike had already given both Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner their own custom logos. Alcaraz debuting his at the 2025 ATP Finals. The creative infrastructure existed, the budget existed, the willingness to invest in next-generation athlete storytelling existed. Nike was just choosing, repeatedly, not to point any of it at the woman who had arguably earned it more than anyone else on their entire roster. Now here is where I want to be very clear, because this story is too important to flatten into a simple good guy, bad guy narrative. What Nike did for Eala was genuinely, authentically beautiful. Full stop. I will defend that statement. In the first half of 2025 alone, Eala rose from world number 140 to a career high of number 64, became the first Filipino to reach the semifinals of a WTA 1000 tournament, and made her Grand Slam main draw debuts at the French Open and at Wimbledon. She defeated then world number 5 Madison Keys at the Miami Open for her first top 5 win, then upset 5-time Grand Slam champion Iga Swiatek to reach that historic semifinal, making her the first Filipino woman to topple multiple top 5 opponents in a single tournament. Her story is one of the most compelling in global sport right now. The hair tie, confirmed by Nike to be a one-off gift and not commercially available, made the gesture even more meaningful precisely because of its rarity. It wasn't a product launch dressed up as sentiment. Nike's post after her Wimbledon debut was simply captioned, "History in full bloom." And Eala's own reaction said everything. She wrote on social media that the Sampaguita was the flower of her country, a reminder of where she came from and everything that brought her there. That is a young woman carrying the weight of a nation onto the world's most prestigious courts and finding a brand willing to honor that weight with real thought and real care. I refuse to be cynical about that moment. It deserved every tear it produced. But here is the uncomfortable truth sitting right beneath the beauty of that gesture. Nike is a corporation making calculated decisions. And the decisions they made throughout 2025 reveal something important and worth examining honestly about what criteria they use when deciding who gets the cultural masterpiece and who gets the color swap. The answer, if you pay close attention, is not achievement. It is not titles. It is not ranking. The answer is story potential, marketability, emotional resonance across growing demographics, reach into valuable consumer markets. The Philippines, Japan, Southeast Asia, these are enormous, rapidly expanding markets for global brands. And a 20-year-old rising star whose every match feels like a national event, who moves an entire country to tears with a wildcard run, who draws comparisons from press and former players to the phenomenon of Emma Raducanu's 2021 US Open breakthrough. That is a brand's commercial dream. Every tournament Eala plays in, fans from her homeland and around the world flock to her practice sessions, fill her match courts, and flood social media with content that no marketing department could manufacture at any price. By that math, Nike's decision-making makes a cold, calculating kind of sense. They were investing in a story that was still unfolding, still building, still capable of exponential commercial growth. Sabalenka's story, by contrast, was already written, already proven, already sold. And maybe in their boardrooms and marketing meetings, Nike concluded they didn't need to invest deeply in a story that had already sold itself. But here is where I think Nike made a serious strategic and honestly an ethical error. Because Sabalenka's fan base noticed. The tennis media noticed. 3 of the top 8 women at the 2025 WTA Finals, Sabalenka, Madison Keys, and Amanda Anisimova, wore Nike. 3 of the most accomplished, highest-ranked women in the sport, all carrying the swoosh, none of them with a custom kit. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. And when that pattern became public knowledge, when Sabalenka sat in front of cameras and said the quiet part out loud, Nike's blind spot became a full-blown public relations problem that no press release was going to quietly clean up. And Sabalenka has shown in her career decisions that she is not someone who passively accepts arrangements that don't serve her. Her move from IMG to Naomi Osaka's agency Evolve at the start of 2025 demonstrated clearly that she is not afraid to walk away when she is unhappy with the people around her. Nike should be reading that signal with both eyes wide open, because a world number 1 who is publicly inviting fans to pressure your Instagram account is one more frustrated press conference away from becoming a free agent. And if that day comes, the brand that signs Aryna Sabalenka and finally gives her the creative investment she's been waiting for is going to look like a genius. Here is what this whole story exposes when you step back and look at it clearly. Nike has a blind spot, a dangerous one, when it comes to recognizing and rewarding the athletes who carry their brand at the highest level. The effort they put into Rafael Nadal and Serena Williams for years set a standard that the current generation of Nike tennis athletes simply is not receiving. And the contrast between what Eala received and what Sabalenka was told is not something that can be explained away with creative scheduling or budget cycles. It is a values question. It reveals what Nike actually values when the cameras are off and the decisions are made in private. None of that diminishes what Alex Eala represents. She is a once-in-a-generation story for the Philippines and for women's tennis globally. By early 2026, she had climbed to a career high of world number 29, the highest-ranked Filipino player in WTA history. The Sampaguita collection was not just a marketing win. It was a cultural moment. It was a brand and an athlete creating something that will be remembered long after the tennis season that produced it has been forgotten. But Sabalenka deserves her moment too. And the fact that she has had to publicly campaign for it, had to joke about fans messaging Nike's Instagram, had to tell the world she's been told to wait until 2027, reveals something deeply uncomfortable about how even the greatest players in women's tennis can be taken for granted by the very brands built on the foundation of their dominance. So here is the question I want you to sit with after you finish watching this. Who is Nike really building for? The players who have already made history or the ones whose story is still selling? And when Sabalenka finally gets her custom kit in 2027, is it going to feel like a reward or is it going to feel like an apology? Drop your answer in the comments below. I want to hear everything. Does Sabalenka have every right to be furious, or is Nike simply playing the long game of brand storytelling and Eala just happens to be the better narrative right now? And do you think Sabalenka is still a Nike athlete by the time 2027 actually arrives? Because I have my own thoughts on that, and I am not fully convinced the 2027 kit ever gets made. Alex Eala got a Sampaguita, a one-of-a-kind hair tie in a custom box with a Filipino proverb that would make you cry if you let it, a limited edition collection designed by a Manila-based artist, a Vogue cover, a visit to Nike headquarters, cultural storytelling so rich, so personal, and so beautifully executed that it set a new benchmark for what brand-athlete relationships can look like in women's sport. She earned every single piece of it. And Aryna Sabalenka, 4 Grand Slam titles, 2 consecutive year-end number ones, one of the greatest players walking on a tennis court today, stood in front of cameras in Riyadh and joked that maybe her fans should start sliding into Nike's DMs because she couldn't get a custom kit for the coming season. The jersey didn't just start a controversy, it pulled back the curtain on everything broken about how brands value women's tennis and everything extraordinary about what Alex Eala has already become. And this story is not over, not even close. If this video made you think, made you feel, or made you want to throw something at Nike's marketing department, hit that like button right now because it genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to be in this conversation. Subscribe to Courtside Classic and turn on notifications because we are not slowing down. And share this one because the more people talking about how women's tennis gets valued and undervalued, the better. I'm Mira. I'll see you in the next one. Don't miss a point.